So on Instagram, you go by Pablo Mini. Is that your last name? It's
Legal last name, Pablo M-I-N-I. It's I get that question a lot.
Okay.
And I'm sure you can imagine throughout school that was kind of a make fun of your last name type
joke?
thing. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. But no, it's literally my last name. My dad's, I think like great grandfather was from Sweden or something. Was it Sweden or Switzerland?
Sweden. Okay.
And I don't know. It was a little bit longer, and then a couple generations ago they cut it down to M-I-N-I, and it fits in the English language.
So they shortened the word to literally the word mini.
I think unintentionally. And ironically, my dad's super tall, and I'm the shortest one in the whole family. And it kind of fit me perfectly, unfortunately.
Oh, okay. So Pablo Mini. There's the quick explanation of the last name.
There it is.
I've always read it, and I was like, okay, what is this like a forum name type of thing where it came from that? But you work at Real Street, you build engines, you have a front-wheel drive car, and there's a lot to talk about with front-wheel drive. That's why I'm actually really glad that you came on now, because
hot topic right now.
It is the topic
Crazy
right now, and I think 2 weeks from now people are going to forget about it because that's how it goes, and then next World Cup or next FL2K, everybody's going to be like, you get like that PTSD flashback when you hear
front-wheel drive to the lanes, or it's a problem.
A car bog in the burnout, right? Something along those lines. But yeah, so what's the deal, man? What do we do here? I mean, what we as in spectator
sport
guy that likes watching racing,
man. I don't know. It's if we're talking about like the sport front-wheel drive, X front-wheel drive, it's personally speaking, I think that it's gotten to a point that most of the parts are making you fast enough to go a certain ET. Some of the parts aren't able to support it. So it's kind of like a mix of, like if you have concrete and dirt, you know, both are used in different ways, but if you put them together, it's not going to really form a strong relationship.
But do you want to slow the class down, or do you just hope that like they'll get tough enough? They'll figure it out.
I mean, you'd hope that those parts that aren't there, that are lacking right now, will catch up. At the same time, even if they're not catching up yet, people like seeing the 7-second cars. You know, that brings a lot of spectators, does a lot of clips online, but it ruins the racer's experience that they miss a qualifying or rounds get shortened in cases if it runs too late because of cleanup. So it's kind of like a balancing game. A buddy of mine, Peter, also from Real Street, he was talking with me about it it was Saturday night. I think that's when they started eliminations. We were wondering, like, what do you do to a class like that? Do you slow it down? I think there's ways that you can kind of get around having still fast cars and not slowing the cars down, because it's not all of them. They're not all braking, but some of them are.
Yeah.
I think you kind of put a limit on maybe parts you're allowed to bring. We thought maybe you stamp a block and you say this is your one block for the event.
Well, that's nice because that makes it cheaper also. Because if you add more rules, that just kind of boils out the more budget guys. Yeah. Like if you add turbo rules, as much as I love precision, it usually ends up favoring precision turbo because they're the best at adapting. So then everybody has to get the new 60, whatever it is, 72.3 or something like that. And that's how it ends up boiling down. Or if you limit engine components or transmissions, then again you cut out the cheaper stuff.
It gets tricky because you make a set of rules, they'll find a way around it. I think the block rule, if they were to institute something like that, you'd have those high-level racers who don't brake as much. They'll still brake, just not as much. You'll have those guys continue to run their program. They might be a little more conservative, so they won't swing for the fences. And then you'll have the guys who are used to sending it every round. Oh, we got 4 spare motors. We're not worried about that. They're not going to throw a rod out the side for one round of qualifying or one round of eliminations just to get to the next round because they have a backup. They'll actually be inclined to limit their, what they have in their pocket for it.
I'd love to see how that boiled out to race day, though. Because
but in the finals, they'll still blow.
But, like, come round one, would it be a 32-car field and 12 of them have buys?
Right.
Or would it be an actual, like, I mean, I don't know if there's ever 32-car fields in X front-wheel drive. Is it
I think 16? I think they allowed 16 to actually compete. But I want to say it was 32 when they did qualifying.
Because that's a lot of front-wheel drive.
It's a bunch of them.
I mean, that's crazy that the class is that big. Because even, like, you look at Pro Mod or anything like that, like X275, LDR, Ultra Street, they struggle to get 32 cars.
Right.
But to get 32 in a X front wheel drive car that are all running, what's the slowest one? 850s?
I think you needed to go an 819 to even buy a tech card for World Cup.
Wow. And the fastest guy won, what, a 780?
760 something. I want to say it was a 760 with the faster motorsports.
So to talk about that kind of tight racing is cool. That's why I don't want to see the class go away. Right, that was the first knee-jerk reaction of all the boomer trans brake guys.
Yeah, those Hondas always blowing up.
Yeah, just get rid of the class.
If you think about it unbiasedly, I mean, obviously I'm a little biased with it with the Hondas, but unbiasedly, those cars are extremely impressive when you talk about power per cylinder and power per cubic inch.
Yep.
I mean, some of those cars are making 14, 15, even almost 1,600 horsepower out of a four-cylinder. Not to even include speed factory, which is, I believe, over 2,000 to run 670 or something like that, 680 maybe.
Yeah, and they're all-wheel drive.
All-wheel drive, so but also four-cylinder.
In that deal, but they, same motor. They just can't. Can Speed Factory just run a bigger turbo in that class?
Yeah, I think it's more open.
So that's why they can run 2,000 horsepower. Because
it's insane though on a four-cylinder. I mean, pistons are this big.
It's stupid for sure. It doesn't make much sense to go sixes. It takes that kind of power at that weight. It's really just a math equation.
Yeah, and
they have that program pretty well dialed in, it seems.
Those dudes, they've been ahead of their game for several years, and they keep on trying, keep on innovating. I gotta say, those are probably the biggest pioneers when it comes to racing, parts distribution for their own parts. They're very, very nice quality parts, and sharing what they do behind the scenes. Mm-hmm. So obviously nobody's transparent 100% in racing, but there's levels of, okay, I'm gonna show this so I can teach someone. And they're actually really good about that. I love watching their stuff.
Yeah. Well, you can't be too transparent in that class because you got to have your one leg up. And I've talked to a few people that, like Damon and Nicole.
Yeah.
Damon doesn't tune anybody else's car in that class because he only tunes their car for that reason.
For sure. And it's a good reason.
It makes sense.
Absolutely.
Because the car is pretty competitive. But what is the weak point on... So I guess we should talk engine because there's Ks, there's Hs, and there's Bs in that class, right?
Right. So I think there's a few Hs, but mainly it's the B and the K guys. At this last World Cup, I think Jamie broke a couple cast blocks.
Yes.
So you have that spread of the B series billet and the B series cast, not even talking about the K yet. And obviously you have more rigidity in a billet block. You don't have the weak points between where the crank sits on the top end to the bottom or the top of the deck. They're just splitting at that power level. It's so is that it's where ripping apart.
The weak point is kind of basically right where the head studs kind of end.
Exactly.
Okay.
Right.
And if you could get the head studs deeper, you'd probably be able to add a little rigidity. Well, maybe, but obviously they're not cast like that.
Maybe, yeah. So maybe with an aftermarket casting, you could get that stud deeper. With the billet, I think they redesigned it anyway. But if you go any deeper on a stock casted block, obviously, then you run into other things. It kind of tapers inwards on the block itself. You have the deck surface. It goes down a hair, and then it extends a little bit as well. But the billet ones, you'll see it's almost straight up, and you just have so much more meat there. So you can't sacrifice metal at that point.
And they're probably a bit heavier, though, too.
Yeah, which is almost better since you want that nose weight.
Yeah, so you can make the car lighter with less ballast.
Right.
If you really think about it on that level. I'm sure a lot of some people probably just throw an engine in there.
Yeah.
Don't really think too much about every little pound, but I'd guess you'd have to.
Those dudes are insane. If you look at like the scale weights, they have, I think, like 80% over the front tires versus the rear. The Hondas are already light, but they're putting all this weight to make it hook, and they hook up well with that. But you have no downforce on the back. So some of these guys are doing aero to try to mitigate that. They'll have like active shocks open up at a certain mile an hour or on shutdown. But those cars being that light in the rear and then that heavy in the front it's wild to see. I mean, I'm sure in rear wheel drive you guys, you move weight.
Yeah, my car is fairly close to like 50-50. It's it's a little heavier on the nose, but I'm not going quite as fast as like Jim or Brett, where I care so much about that little bit.
Speaking of Jim, I actually lost $20 on Jim at World Cup.
Oh,
we were in the stands. I'm like, I want 120, I think it was on the inside lane or whatever. I was betting dollars all night, and then I got to him. I'm like, I'll be big dog. $20.
Well, he broke and spun all at the same time.
Wasn't great.
Yeah.
So Jim owes me $20 right there.
He does. But so the Bs, they make a little more. Are they beneficial anywhere? Do they make more torque? Because they're a much bigger engine when you look at them. Like the cylinder head and everything is huge compared to a K.
It's a little wider when you look at it like over top, but the K has displacement and stroke on the B. I think the reason the B is still king is just because of time. It's been out for maybe 15 years more than the K has, maybe even 20. I think it was the late 80s when they started. And it's just been developed so much more. The K series, it has a better stroke, more available stroke options between the K20 and K24, bigger pistons. The head design is awesome because of the VTC and the VTEC. You can phase that camshaft if those people choose to do so. Some of them just lock it out.
Yeah.
But
probably ECU dependent as well.
That, and also it's oil pressure to make that phasing happen.
Oh, okay.
So some of those rather have it in the bearings or on the side of the pistons to have a little better longevity of the engine.
Oh, so they ditch that just to get a little bit more cooling effect
as a byproduct.
Yeah. Okay,
cooling
that's
and
cool.
having more oil. But I think you're getting to a point right now that both engines are getting really close. They're starting to go similar ETs, different technology.
Well, that's, I see Victor post about K being superior.
Sure, yeah.
Of course, he's talking shit about the B series guys a little bit.
I understand.
Not that his engine didn't come out or doesn't get worked on.
It happens.
But at that level, I think it's more just assumed that the engines are going to be coming out or the cylinder head's going to be coming off, so you have to be prepared to work on it.
Right.
But at that level, if you're going to be prepared to work on it like that, you can figure out which engine really is best. So why pick one over the other then?
I don't know. I think it might just be the flavor that they prefer.
Just preference.
So I've been a B guy in my car since I've had it, but then I built some K series on the side as well, and I'm starting to lean more towards the K series myself.
Are they easier to put together?
They're different. The B series has less parts, but the K series isn't anything that's like difficult to figure out. I mean, all the parts make sense when you look at it. If you have it all laid out, it's not like you can get one part confused with another. I do like how much technology is in the K compared to the B.
Like all the
head stuff.
Yeah.
And I don't know. It's a pretty cool engine. The bed plate design makes it nice too when you're working on the bottom end stuff. Set all your bearings together versus having caps that like to walk like on the B series.
Well, if you have to run the same turbo, would one engine become superior then? Because if one has better cylinder head flow, it should be able to utilize a turbo a lot better than one without. But even this class allows nitrous on some select
I think with a weight
setups?
penalty. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I think you add 150 pounds, if I'm not mistaken, or 200 pounds. I know that blue car that was running in the World Cup, Andrew, I think is his name. It's a blue Civic. I want to say he was on a big shot of nitrous with a smaller turbo, and he was still running up with those guys with a 73, 85.
Yeah, I feel like that's more going to hurt parts.
It's not going to help it. But he did have to pay that weight penalty to be able to run it.
I just know nitrous is so freaking hard on pistons and shit like that.
Do you run nitrous on your car?
I do.
Okay, just to get up or throughout the whole pass?
Well, the original thought was, okay, once it gets up on the brake, you turn off the nitrous. And Alpha said, why would I do that?
Right. I mean, it's power.
He makes a really good argument.
I like that argument.
Why turn it off at that point? So it's just 100% throttle. It turns on, which if I have to pedal it or, it spins or something, I have it there.
Yeah.
So that's kind of nice. It would be cool to put like a second kit on a button or something, but...
little scramble button?
Yeah. I don't have any scramble button or anything.
It's always turned up?
It's just always all in.
I like it.
Tune-up. What we have is there.
When did you go 2J in that car?
It was an LS for maybe... It was running for about 2 months as an LS.
Not much.
I built the whole car around the LS. And I made 3 passes.
Right.
And it went somewhere in the 9s, like deep 9s. And I just was like, meh.
Was it just not quick enough? You couldn't get it to where you wanted it to like drive out of racing, or what was it?
I knew it wouldn't make the power without drastic change because it was a supercharged stock block, stock cylinder head, stock LS basically. Mm-hmm. So it's like, well, if it's not going to make the power that I want it to, why would I stick with? It needed a lot of work, so I was like, why would I stick with this? And I already had the 2J.
Okay, so you were preparing it on the side or something
for a different car.
Okay,
and then kind of was like, well, this is pointless. Why would I have two different cars? One that's a street car that makes 1,200 horsepower and one that's a race car that makes 600 horsepower. Seems so dumb at the time.
A little backwards.
Yeah, so I just kind of committed to having one car that made 1,200 horsepower was the goal. It had a 68 millimeter turbo at the time.
Okay. Like a 6870 or?
Yeah.
Okay.
So sold that. Yeah. Got an 86.
8685?
Well, first it was an 83, 85, which was a really good turbo. Now it's a Gen 2 86, a next gen 86, which is a really, really good turbo.
Those are fairly new too, right?
The
86?
We put it on my car as soon as it came out, basically. Okay. When they first finally launched it, Precision was able to get me one, and it's really, really good.
Man.
What turbo do you have on your car?
It's a VS 6766.
Okay.
So it's similar to the Gen 2 6766 that Precision had. Not quite as good in technology. I mean, you can't outperform the Precision. But the Precision 67 also wasn't this thing that rocked the world or anything.
Yeah.
So I'm actually going to be switching to next gen 64 Precision probably in the next month or so, I think.
What keeps your car from running in
Sport front-wheel drive?
Yeah.
I'm stopping myself, man. So
because your car looks and
it looks crazy
and has all of the fit and finish to what it could be. I guess that was my assumption, was you were stopping yourself.
Yeah. So weight is there for sport front-wheel drive. The cage, I would just have to redo it for, I think, the class-specific cage to run those times, obviously, which safety is very, very key.
Yeah, you'd have to add like a funny car hoop.
Yeah, do all that good stuff. But I already have a parachute, the transmission, everything is there to make sure that it would run it. Engine would need a little bit of work just to do some beefier stuff on the bottom end. And then obviously the turbo. Everything else supporting is there. Fuel system, wastegate, turbo, manifold, all that stuff.
Okay, so you probably think about it fairly often.
Yeah, well, when I started building it, I want to say this iteration, I've had that car for like 10 years. When I started building this iteration around 4.5, 5 years ago, the goal was to run sport front-wheel drive. I didn't have a turbo picked out yet, but at that time the cars were consistently going 830s, 820s sometimes, and then you'd go to the local events and they run 850s, 860s. But now, unless you run a 7-second pass, as we saw this past week, you're not even in the running.
Yeah.
So at that point, I stopped myself. I say, as the car started getting ready to come out in this setup, it's too expensive. And in my opinion, it's not as fun if you have to be wrenching every round. And it's very expensive again. You know? So the car I set up this past year for around 950 index. So I did FL2K 950 index. Then I did some other events like Streetcar Takeover. There was open front-wheel drive, but there's not as many sport front-wheel drives that go to that event. So those cars were high 8-second cars most of the time. So I was running around that area, but Nitro versus the World has been getting a bit more popular again. And I think Victor might be doing it again in some of next year's events. So the 64 I'm looking at will let me run in that class. So I'm going to go towards that high 8-second range.
So what does Nitro versus the World have differing than
Sport front-wheel drive?
Or X front-wheel drive, right? Same class?
Yeah, so they're similar. I think X front-wheel drive takes off transmission restrictions, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay.
And there was like one or two other changes in
And then there's X Street that they had at FL2K.
X Street,
which allows rear-wheel drive cars.
Right.
A couple of them.
I don't remember what the rules for the rear-wheel drive cars were, but the X front-wheel drive or Sport front-wheel drive cars were still, they had a pretty good mix from what I saw.
We had a long conversation about putting my car in
X Street?
X Street.
What would that look like?
It needed an air-to-air intercooler.
Okay.
It needed 80 pounds put on it.
Okay.
And then it needed a 76.2 turbo, that one that they run.
76.2.
Whatever that one that they run. Maybe it's a 72.
Oh, for the Sport front-wheel drive guys? 73.9.
73.9. Yeah. It needed that turbo.
Also with the same turbine, the 85 millimeter?
It could run, it just said inducer.
Okay.
So I guess whatever exducer I could have fit on there. Could have put a big ass back housing on it.
That'd be cool.
But that was all the rules for me to change.
Cool.
To fit in that class. But
are you going to do that?
I wanted to do it last year, but that was just too. I didn't want to step down in turbo. I was like, because I didn't want to send. I had to send my turbo into precision, and then they would have swapped it out. But then I was like, then I don't have my 86 anymore.
I mean, yes, the bigger is better. You go faster, but if you get to compete more, I don't know.
I mean, I get to compete one event.
Oh, it's only for FL2K?
Street. I don't know where else they run that.
Oh, okay.
Because Sport Farm Wheel Drive doesn't allow it.
Right.
Yeah. So I don't know. But that was interesting. So what's the difference, I guess, between Nitro versus the World and X front wheel drive?
So X front wheel drive, obviously only turbo cars, front wheel drive. The Nitro versus the World, from what I've seen so far, it allows front wheel drive and all wheel drive, I think, for nitro methane cars.
Oh, that's cool.
So those things always running on tilt. A bunch of funny car fuel.
No turbo.
No turbo.
No turbo.
Yeah.
Just nitro.
Just nitro with most of them mixed to a certain extent. And then for the turbo guys, it's a weight penalty to go above a 64 millimeter inducer turbo. And then you can do, at its lightest for a turbo car, a 64 or 66.
64.
64, 66. I think there's a weight penalty for a 64, 70.
Yeah.
But it's around that mix. So the nitro cars, they'll run 850s. Some will shoot for 819, I think is the record. So a little lower in the 8-second range. They don't last like that. And the turbo cars are cars that would have been in the competition for sport front wheel drive several years ago. So they're quick front wheel drive cars without blowing up every
They're kind of like retired out of...
Yeah, that's a good way to look at it.
Because they're unable to still compete at that level because of the new...
Yeah.
All the new fanciness.
Way too much blowing up.
Yeah, that too. So they get to slow them down a little bit. The all-motor front-wheel drive class is actually pretty... It's not front-wheel drive, but the all-motor Hondas are pretty interesting too.
From World Cup?
Yeah.
Those were crazy.
It's crazy how fast they can go.
8:15, I think, is the record right now for an M1 car.
All-motor.
Little Honda, four-banger.
Yeah, that's really impressive.
It's insane.
I don't know how they can squeeze that out of that.
There's, Jamie Marsh?
Yeah.
He's in that world also with the M1 racing, and a lot of his cars and his camp or whatever also run in that class. He's been doing some videos with Skunk 2, and they have an engine dyno and head machines and stuff. And I know he didn't have the best World Cup experience this past time, but the technology that they say that they're developing like behind the scenes to try to set up that class to go even faster and faster, the little tiny engine tweaks that they do, it's pretty insane that like you're not reinventing the engine, you're not adding a different fuel, you're not putting a power adder on it, but they're still finding things to make more power.
Yeah, I would imagine a lot of rotating weight on the engine to pull off.
Sure.
Cylinder head porting, all that stuff. Do the engines stay together? Because you're doing a ton of work.
Yeah, more than the nitro cars, that's for sure. But I don't know what the wear is on something like that. I don't know what that point is.
Because like an 8-second car to stay together is actually pretty great. That sounds sounds good to me on just M1, not like nitro either.
Right.
I know Jamie and Rob had some...
Rob
at induction.
Rynan?
Yeah, and Jamie had some beef about what fuel they ran one year.
Oh, God.
Because, if you have a car that you're swishing a little nitro into...
Yeah. That stuff embeds in the lines, too. I think you have, like, remnants of it.
They check the oil.
The oil, too?
Yeah, they do a test on the oil because you can't hide it if it's in the oil.
Right.
It's pretty easy to tell. So that's how they tech them a lot. That's how they tech like pro mods.
Right.
They can check the oil and tell you what fuel is run in it.
The level that those guys are racing, the field's so tight and the cars go so fast for what's in it. I mean, I guess you'll have that people protest each other, and in some cases it's valid. I don't know that situation particularly, but I know there's always a lot of drama within that all motor stuff.
Well, I mean, of course, like if there's 20 grand to win, 20, 25, 30 grand, whatever it ends up being for some of these classes, you're going to try to squeeze something out.
It's a tough game.
I always laugh because like cheating in motorsports is funny because given enough time, people look at it with like respect and like, oh man, like, yeah, he was like sneaking this by, like he cheated
above his or ahead of his time.
Yeah, that they always like act like it was so great, but then if you're the guy racing him in the moment,
it sucks if you're lined up with him, of course.
But then like books are written 10 years later.
Yeah.
So it's kind of funny if you just wait long enough, cheating is somehow respected. It's like, oh, he was just gray area racing, but that's not really cheating when you're in the gray area.
Sometimes. Like the gray area, I think you have to live in the gray area for the really fast cars. You have to, but if you're straight up going against the rule, not a lot that you can say to be on your side.
Yeah, you know? And then if you gray area race long enough, then the rule book becomes 2 inches thick, and nobody wants to race that class anymore because nobody can figure it out.
Right.
It's happened a lot to like Ultra Street. I think the rule book is,
right.
It take like a year to read it. So it's like, oh, well, guess I'm not going to do this because I don't want to have to figure this out.
Yeah.
So unless you're like in the class already, it doesn't lend well to newcomers, which kind of sucks. And I feel like X Street is kind of like that in a way, X front wheel drive.
Yeah.
Where it doesn't lend that well to newcomers unless you join on with like a program and then.
Yeah. Well, so with like X front wheel drive, I think it comes down to the money again. You're winning, was it 20 grand or something for World Cup? Big payout.
I think it was Definitely. 20 grand at FL2K also.
Also, huge, like big ups to the Miller guys and to Victor to also putting together such a nice payout. But if you're throwing 2-3 engines at it at an event, I mean, you're still negative.
Oh yeah.
You're not. We were in the stands after one of the nights when we closed up at World Cup, and it's my buddy Peter, I, and a couple other people that we were hanging out with. And there was this girl that works at the track. She was hanging out after her shift and watching some of the racing. And she starts asking us, she's like, do people make money with this? Can you actually be profitable? And everybody there just started laughing. We're like, sorry, but the dreams of going out there and campaigning a car and making profit from it, unless you have a business that's directly being marketed from it. So, for example, Victor with his car, obviously that does marketing towards induction. And at that point, you see some of the returns.
Yeah.
But if you're just a regular dude trying to join a class like Sport Front Wheel Drive or X Front Wheel Drive and go out and make money, I don't think that's best business strategy,
No, I don't think you're making any money. I think the only person in that conversation was making money was her working at the track all day.
Selling the chicken tenders to us during the day. Yeah.
That was the only profitable venture going on.
Right.
Maybe if you host the event.
Sure, yeah. No, event promoters, that's a great gig. But
yeah, they do pretty well. But otherwise, it'd be cool if there was enough money to make it profitable, but then people would just put so much money into it that it would not be profitable again.
Right, because then they'd catch up and be too fast. And I guess you got to look at it like cycles. You'll have the classes that are easy to attain and make some money in racing, and then they get too fast, then it recycles. You have to do a different class, and you can't just have the same thing for 10 years. Things need to progress and change and shift.
Well, even with that class, like, I don't know what the most progress has come from where it's gotten faster. It's probably mostly turbo technology.
Sure. Tuning and turbo technology.
Yeah, that's probably why that class has gotten 0.4 faster in the last 5 years.
Right, which is crazy. Out of a 4-cylinder to go 0.4 faster with similar parts.
It lends to think what is going to come in the next 4 years because 0.4 is a lot, but you start to lose your margin of return starts to go down, and you just hurt more parts than you're actually
You look at accomplishing. The 60-foot times from those 4 or 5 years ago. There were those guys that were going fast, but most of them were going 150, 60 foots around there. 10 years ago, they were all 180, 60 foots. There's cars in front-wheel drive cutting 138s, 137s consistently.
Yeah.
And it's a lot of tuning and a lot of hammering on the engine, but it's wild how much they came forward on a front-wheel drive car. 1.3s are what some rear-wheel drive cars are doing consistently and being fast.
Yeah.
You'll have the guys that go 1.1s, 1.0s, and then, excuse me, very, very fast people.
I'm not that fast. I just hit it with all of it, and then it like slowly loses G-force.
At least have the travel. You're putting the weight on your tire. We're just dragging ourselves forward.
I mean, listen, nobody told you guys.
Nobody told us to build it.
Yeah.
No.
There's a reason that, like, if you look at the history of why front-wheel drive cars existed, it was because it was the cheapest thing to build in a factory.
Right. No rear diff, no drive shaft.
You build the whole front subframe, all the wiring, and you just bolt it in.
Literally.
And then you connect a fuel line.
Right. Yeah, do a return, a feed, and you're good. Start driving.
It is kind of still the cheaper form of racing, I would say. Like, what does those engines cost?
So a short block you'll get for maybe $7,000, all done up if you buy a fully built one from someone that sends you a package. A long block maybe around 10 to 15, depending on options.
Okay, so it's pretty steep.
Yeah, it's expensive.
Multiple of them.
But then you'll have the guys who will cheap out a little bit and they don't last as long, but they'll make a couple passes. So
you could probably put your own together.
Yeah.
For fairly reasonable.
A lot
price.
cheaper.
Yeah.
Right.
Because even I saw somebody posted like a cylinder head that they bought brand new casting for like $400, and I'm like, oh.
So the China
that
heads,
must be nice.
There's these. So you have the original Honda B series heads. I'll give you that one example. There were two popular types: the B16 and a GSR. There's a China casting of the B16, which is still pretty good. I think they changed the seats and add some of the rocker arms that you'd get out of an OEM core head, and those heads will perform very well. Not as good as an OEM one, but with a little bit of work, you can get it similar to that level.
Yeah.
4Piston just released their brand new casted, better flow than an OEM head and better flow than a ported OEM head in a B Series GSR footprint. So different from that China casting, but better than OEM ported. I think they want like $3,000 for it. It's expensive.
Yeah.
But that should open up a big world when it comes to letting those engines live longer.
For sure. And I would imagine there's probably a good bit more deck surface so you can actually machine them down a few times.
I think they did deck surface. I know that when I was talking to one of the guys over the weekend there, they said that the coolant port where the exhaust port is surrounded with, it's a thinner coolant area, so you can have more meat on there. Apparently those in the front wheel drives will crack in that area.
So they left it still a wet
head.
Interesting.
Yep. Yeah, which some of the sport phone guys, they'll do solid deck and they'll take all the coolant out and just run it in the head to an ice box inside of the car. So I guess that helps the flex on the bottom end. I mean, you're asking a lot from this tiny block.
Yeah, I guess I didn't realize if many of them even ran any coolant at all.
Right.
But I guess some of them still just run it through the head just to keep it a little cool, and small tiny radiator maybe.
Yeah, some will do the small radiator, some will just do an ice tank inside of the car.
So none of them are just like full nothing, no coolant
I think there's a few, but I don't see a huge advantage to that, especially if some of the fast guys are doing it with still coolant in the head.
It would just be about weight, but if there's a weight limit anyways, then I guess who cares?
Right. Yeah. I, for one, me and my buddy Peter, we always fight about this. I have a radiator and an alternator in the car, and he has radiator, no alternator. He's got a Sentra, also sport front wheel drive build, but we'll always joke around about it, like, oh, you saved the weight on the alternator, but I can drive back after the pass.
I like having an alternator.
Yeah, for sure.
I don't want to have to sit up there and wait for somebody to come get me, because unfortunately, no one's gonna come get me. I have to drive back.
Yeah, for sure.
Like, I don't have a golf cart. Somebody's gonna come push me back after a pass. I'm gonna be sitting there pushing.
Yeah, and you don't want to have to like push your car within the lanes if you're tired. You're in a suit, and by any reason you're by yourself or something, you're already suited up in your Hans and your harness. You don't want to have to get out and push.
I run an OEM style battery in my car. I run a Walmart Everstart. I don't have like some lightweight deal that's going to take a charge.
Right. You got to hook it up between rounds.
I don't even have a generator.
Yeah. It's easier. I mean, to a certain extent, don't reinvent the wheel. Keep the alternator.
Yeah, it's not really worth the weight savings for my car. I get maybe if you're trying to run a 16-volt system, then it makes sense, but you can still kind of get away with that.
With the 16-volt, you get a little more out of the injector. The ECU stuff normally is, I think they say it's better response. I don't have a 16-volt personally, so I don't know, but they do say that there's benefits to it, but I don't know. Some of the guys say that you run super high RPM in sport front wheel drive, some of them around 11,000, sometimes 12,000 RPM at the top of fourth, and that might cause a problem with belts or voltage regulation.
In general, probably don't like that.
Right. So maybe that's why some of them do it, but I mean, at the level that I'm at, nowhere near those guys, I love having the alternator.
Yeah, well, you attempted a drag and drive, right?
Yeah. Oh, God, that was not good.
You did attempt the first sick week, I would say. Was it the first one?
It wasn't the first one. I think it was the second year, if I'm not mistaken. Dude, we had such a
what
bad
happened
week.
Because I saw you there on day one.
Yeah.
I witnessed it.
It was, oh my God.
And then you're like a ghost.
Such a roller coaster of emotions, dude. All right, so we showed up to Sick Week. We had the trailer full of extra axles, because Hondas break axles, and some extra parts, things to take with us. What we didn't think would happen is grenade everything. So that's pretty much what we did. The first day, we went out, the Sunday before, we did the test passes, right? And everything was good. I want to say they had the slick and the radial lane. We went to the slick lane, obviously. We run slicks. And everything was good. The next day,
that was at Orlando, right?
At Orlando, yeah.
Okay.
So then it started also Monday at Orlando.
Yeah, so that was the second one.
Right. So, okay, yeah, exactly. So we went up for our first pass, broke 2 axles in the starting line, instantly off the 60-foot. They were separating the cars for slicks and radials on the faster classes. The class that I was doing, they were sending everybody down the radial lanes.
Both axles?
Both axles,
Is
instantly.
That common? I feel like one is.
It's not
sense.
uncommon. Sometimes you'll see that happen, but it's not as common for it to happen where it did for my car. Because I've never, up until that point, I had never raced on a radial prep. It always been street prep, like very light stuff, or slick specific prep. So it was super tight that day. Broke both axles. We had the replacements. Put it back in the lanes. Got it replaced instantly. Put it back in the lanes. Approached the launch a little bit different. So now that I know that it's a radial prep, I know this is going to happen. Let's launch a little differently. Got out
Could you
good.
just pull out of the groove like a lot, or like
You
try
could
to
do
find
that.
like a bald spot?
What I'll do, if there is a bald spot, we'll use that. But if it's radial specific, I'll drag out the clutch a lot and then let first gear basically slip for the first 0.3 or 0.4 seconds or something.
Okay.
Now we have a valve that we put in earlier this year, so we can really fine tune that. But at that time, it was just foot stuff. So first gear come out, second gear fine. I start to lay in it a little bit more into third. Or I'm about to go into third. I shipped into third, and it breaks again, both axles.
Into third gear?
Into third gear.
Okay.
I coast back. I had only brought 1 replacement axle for both sides, which we had just put in the car. We get back, we're looking online, seeing if anybody local has one, what shop or what parts store has at least a replacement we can throw in. Mm-hmm. We finally find one towards the end of the night, and everybody's on their way to Bradenton, I think it was, the next stop.
Yeah.
Yeah,
so.
And Brett and Jim were there. We said go ahead. They were already on the way because we were trying to convoy and everything. So it's
That's
dark.
your first taste of drag and drive.
First taste.
No one waits around.
No, and they waited for some time. I got to give them credit for that. But it got to the point like, come on, guys, you guys, I'm sure have enough to worry about as well.
Yep.
Get out in front. We'll catch up if we got to get there late.
Problems on the way
they
there.
They did, and thank God they left because if not, how would you have caught that stuff and still had time?
Oh, it would have been like 4 a.m., 5 a.m.
Would have been awful
on the side of the road. Yeah.
So we finally get the replacement parts. These guys drive up some axles for us. We put the axles in. We hook up the trailer again. This one dude had some rags, the mechanic clean rags, and we give ourselves like a little track shower, I guess you would. And we were happy. Go to start the car, starts up good. I put it into first, and nothing. It's just spinning. Turns out in that third gear shift where I broke both axles, I also broke the pinion inside of the trans and the final drive. So we were out of it at that point. Damien and Nicole had just gotten back to the track, and I think they were dropping something off or something. So they pulled us from the next to the staging lanes to where their trailer was. So we left the car right there for the night, and my wife picked me up later that evening, picked us up, me and Shane. And then we
walk of shame.
It was bad. It was sad. As we were coming out, we see these guys outside of the gate of Orlando with their engine in like 1,000 pieces.
Yep.
So we're like, okay, at least we're gonna go have some dinner right now, and we're not these guys. It sucks, but they're determined, and you gotta give them credit.
Yeah.
So we go back home. The next morning, I pick up the car. My buddy came with his trailer, and we got it all back on and dropped it off home. The third day, we met up with Brett and Jim, and then finished the route with them. And then we heard that the last day they would allow exhibition people, even if you didn't make it the rest of the week.
So we still had a ticket, so I mean,
I still had the ticket.
They really should let you race. Like if you still have like you're out, you can't win. You didn't hand in slips, but you still technically have a
So we still want to have fun.
Yeah.
I mean, we want to experience it and whatnot. The week leading up to it, we put more miles on that car. We put like 1,000 miles or something on it, and it was doing good. We got the cooling system figured out. The interior wasn't awful. It was just loud, very loud.
Yeah,
but
you have some ear protection
we
prepared.
did get some earbuds, or some earmuffs. It helped a lot.
Yeah, I was using ones that like you use to shoot.
Oh yeah, like firearm protection.
Like actual like noise canceling ones. Yeah.
Right.
Because it sucks driving that like.
What's the loudest part? Is it the engine for your car?
Yeah, it was the engine for sure. It just hums.
Oh man.
Like I don't know, does yours rattle?
There's the rattling because everything's solid mounted, but the engine's not that loud. The trans is super loud. It's dog box, all straight cut gears, and it just whines. It's crazy.
Well, you have gearing to cruise at a decent speed.
Yeah, fourth gear is decent.
Yeah, but that's where it helps.
But the straight cut gear still, it sucks.
Yeah.
Not bad. Anyways, we find a spare transmission Thursday night. And we put that in late Thursday night, and we're like, okay, Friday, we're going to go do the exhibition. We're going to finish this up, at least do a run. Driving to the track from my house to Orlando to do that final day, it's like a 35-minute drive. We're about 20 minutes in, cruising, 2,000 RPM, minding our business, no boost, nothing. The engine shuts off. We open the hood, and the cam gear is just sitting right there in the engine bay. It broke the cam.
It broke. It actually snapped.
The snout of the camshaft broke, and I think what might have happened, the bolt might have backed out, and then it didn't come out all the way because it was still on the snout of the cam.
Yeah.
But it might have loosened enough for the thread depth on that bolt to not been enough to hold the tension on that cam.
Mm-hmm.
Sucks. We got towed again, and then we stayed home for the rest of the day.
Is that like an OEM cam, or is that like?
No, it was an aftermarket cam.
Nice.
Yeah. When I got the replacement, I looked at the instructions, and the instructions were like, don't use an OEM bolt. Use a longer one.
Oh.
Yeah. It had been good for years.
Who would have thought?
And ever since that point, I always tell everybody to run a longer cam gear bolt.
Yeah. So didn't really get a whole lot of sick week experience.
Not a great sick week experience.
See, I always worry, I tell this to a lot of people, is you can test it for 2,000 miles, but the next 1,000 miles are still going to now be harder wear and like you just did a bunch of wear and tear on it. So you almost need to be like slightly untested because you can't go put 1,000 miles on some of these cars because then it's not going to make it the next 1,000 miles.
You got less miles left on it for sure.
You only have a handful, like a built 2J, a built B series. Like you only have a handful of miles, a handful of passes. Right. These are all consumable parts at this level, all of them. And like you were saying, I have a cylinder head sitting there because a $2,000-$3,000 2JZ cylinder head unfortunately becomes consumable.
Man,
it's a tough pill to swallow.
It sucks. It's a giant chunk of unusable metal at that point.
Yes.
We talked to some of the all-wheel drive guys at World Cup. My buddy Gene that works with me and I went to their area every morning for some nice Dominican coffee. Well worth it.
Damn, I wish I knew about this.
I'll have to bring you next World Cup. I'll make sure you come and get some. But
like Cuban or like Dominican coffee.
Dude, that stuff was crack. It was the best coffee I had all week.
You only need like a little bit of it.
Small cup, straight black with half a teaspoon of sugar, no milk or anything. It was delicious. They said they bring several heads and they switch them out. I want to say after 3 or 4 passes, and they say they got it to a point where they don't grenade. But they'll find things to replace so they can salvage the head. Yeah. Which I think at that level, if they need to do that and they're running that preventatively, I think that's awesome.
Yeah, well, grenading an engine is going to cost you, I don't know, like $10,000, like you said.
Plus cleanup.
Plus if it goes through a turbo, plus if it ruins your everything. But figuring it out before grenades could only cost you, a couple $1,000s here and there, by just whatever gaskets and valves and whatever they end up finding. So hopefully maybe more people follow that lead and just preventatively maintenance because that'd be really nice. But it sucks when you think like pulling ahead is maintenance.
It sucks, yeah. But it is, I think, the right path to do. I remember when I started working with Jay, he said that when they were figuring out the 2J, he'd take it apart after most races just to look at how everything was living. Yeah. Everything would be running perfectly. There'd be no problem. Tunes look good. The logs look nice. The car was doing great. But they'd pull it apart, and he'd look at the little tiny pieces. He said, this is what this is doing. That's what that was. This is how that likes to be. And that helped him progress so much further in engine building and knowing what's going to happen before it does.
Well, I've seen kind of Brett and Joe at Fast Forward do a similar thing. Right. I was talking to somebody and they were like, "Oh, doesn't Brett pull that engine out all the time?" I was like, Well, not really, but also it's why it doesn't kick a rod out the side of the block is because if you pull it out before that happens, then you can figure it out and keep that from happening. It's why the chains aren't broken. It's why it's why if you see 2 psi more of crankcase pressure, all of a sudden you're like, all right,
and
yank it out.
Most people who aren't that deep into racing won't understand those little tiny changes mean the world, because the engine's telling you a story at that point, and you just have to listen.
Yeah.
If you can listen to that kind of thing and do that preventative maintenance, it's not only easier on your budget, you'll have a more consistent car, but it's safer. I mean, if you have an oil down on a car like that, in the end of the track, or even by the 8th mile, it could get potentially very dangerous.
Well, and if it happens in round 2 of World Cup and suddenly your engine's pickled and you freaking got, shavings all in your oil, guess what? It did cost you potentially 20 grand. So it's like, if you can be smart and think about these things, it's definitely nice. I like to see the forward thinking, but it's hard for me to actually replicate that.
Do you do any type of analysis or whatever on your engine stuff, or do you kind of just see if
I cut the oil filter open every time I open? Every time.
Cool.
Religiously, always cut the oil filters. Always,
spread them out.
Spread out the the webbing in the oil filter. Always make sure that's good, because that'll tell me bearings, and it'll tell you a lot. But bearings is usually my go-to, even though the 2Js don't seem to eat bearings too bad.
It's a robust oiling system in the factory.
They do pretty well. It's not an RB. It doesn't just suck at everything.
Yeah. Man,
sorry, RB guys,
The PRP guys, are you familiar with them from Australia? Those dudes are pushing heavy on that RB package with the new block that they're making. I think they made a new head too.
There's a lot now in the U.S. A lot of RB cars in the U.S. that are fast, like 6 seconds street car fast, all-wheel drive deals. They are impressive, but it is still an RB in the end of the day.
They sound crazy. They're fast, but I don't think you'll get that reliability out of them. Not in its current state, at least.
Not going that fast. I mean, I wouldn't expect much reliability, but at least like a few passes would be nice.
Right.
That would be reliable at that level. Would be an event.
That's crazy.
Because reliability changes depending on what you're doing, but it has to make it an event.
Yeah.
Without pulling the engine out for it to be reliable, in my opinion.
Right. No, if you're pulling between rounds, that's it's like a Honda at that point.
Yeah. Even, I was with Garrett watching Eagle, and how that thing's like cylinder heads off every 5 passes to make sure everything's good. That's lashing the valves every pass.
Wow.
That's 15 passes on rods.
Really?
And that's like, you keep a spare crank rods pistons combo with you.
It's like a top fuel car at that point.
Absolutely.
Wow.
Like you have it's.
Well, doesn't that car also make like 5,000 horsepower or something?
It does. And running quarter mile is a lot harder than running 1/8 mile on it.
It's heavy.
So you're basically cutting your amount of passes in half.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
5,000 horsepower. I can't imagine the feel of something like that when it launches. Because it's not just a 60, it's carrying it out through the whole pass.
That was what I was impressed about. Because, a lot of cars can do like a 1060, but to pull 2 Gs
the whole
across the board, my car is like,
Right.
This is like, but the Hondas are kind of opposite. They're like,
the back half is crazy.
Nothing, and then like all of it.
Yeah.
So it's kind of funny. That's almost the opposite. But to pull for that hard the whole pass.
It went 580?
Yeah.
80 something, right?
I think it maybe even went a 560. No, I don't know if it went that fast. The radial tire record is 550.
Wow.
That's the fastest on a radial.
Is that like a 315?
Period. Yeah.
Okay.
No, 315s are pretty good. You guys run like a slick, though, like a stiff sidewall slick.
A soft sidewall slick.
Soft.
Yeah, so the X front-wheel drive class limits you to a 24.5-inch slick, which I wonder if they'll move up to a bigger size, because you'll have more mile an hour you can get out the top end. I think you could launch it a little softer.
Just what they need.
You'd have more tire.
Give them more mile an hour out the back.
But just on safety, too, there were a couple cars that nose dove and popped slicks at that event, if I'm not mistaken, and they'll replace a tire after one pass, 1 or 2 passes. They'll chunk. They literally have pieces come off of them.
On the shutdown, they'll start to chunk. right?
I don't know when it happens, but the cars at that level will literally destroy a tire in 1 or 2 passes.
Yeah. Well, if they prep too much, I've heard they don't like that either. If they prep too far down the shutdown, they don't like that because it ends up chunking them. But I think a lot of that's all speculation because how do you know when it's doing it?
I mean, do you run like tire laser sensors to see? I know they have them.
Damon probably runs them on his car.
Right.
If anybody
all the
runs
data.
some kind of data, it's them.
All the data.
Because I was watching them a little bit. I'm like, you guys have a lot more cool shit going on than a lot of other
I think she
people.
was one of the first ones to run those shocks in the back for the wing.
Yep, for the
Everybody
safety.
else was lifting and like lifting the rear of the car, and they had that thing dialed down.
Yeah, I was talking to him. I was like, I get, you don't want people to copy you, but maybe this one's okay. Let them have this idea.
Yeah, it's safety at the end of the day.
Yeah, safety is fine. Like,
Right.
everybody should copy each other on safety a little bit.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, that car, it's tough to know when the slicks would be coming apart. That would be my main worry because you can control a car doing a lot of dumb things and keep a car straight doing a lot of dumb things, but a tire coming apart or popping,
Especially in the front.
yeah.
Like if you fishtail and you can kind of control it, that's one thing. But if you're nosediving and you have no steering,
Well, they're already so low, they'll just drive themselves more into the
Yeah.
ground. I mean, if you somehow pop both, you're going to be like actually lawn darting that thing.
yeah, you'll do like a front flip or something.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's possible, but you would think that the car wants to do that.
It would depend on how well it could bite
Right.
into the ground because they got a freaking 300-pound nose plate.
Yeah.
At least I know,
more
like,
on some cars.
Kyle's, that's what they did on his. I
Right.
can't imagine. That scares me too because the weight in front of you like that push in
Yeah.
or attempt to in a head-on crash. I mean, Jamie's
Right.
was probably one of the worst crashes
Right.
some
Well, from
pretty bad ones.
from World Cup for sure that I saw in a front wheel drive car.
on a front-wheel drive deal. Yeah.
The one crash that happened with Brett's Pass,
Yeah.
that one was insane.
Yeah.
That was this local guy Gato. He makes manifolds. That was his wife driving, and luckily she was okay after the crash. But dude, that we were in the booth listening to everything, and we had the live stream. It was delayed like 30 seconds or a minute, and we knew that Brett was up, and we just heard like crash, 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 and we're like freaking out. Like, what the hell happened? Mm-hmm. But thank God she walked away from that. I think that goes to show you how important safety is. A lot of people like to complain about it. It's a reason NHRA puts rules on that kind of thing.
Yeah, I was watching that pass. I got a pretty crazy video actually of that
Really?
pass because I was watching
Were you
from
in
one
the
of the
stands?
VIP suites up top, and like the fact that it rolled so many times was crazy. Like after you were like, okay, it's about to stop,
No?
it then rolled again and again and again. And I guess the throttle stuck. They said
Really?
that's what I heard, but the car drove to the center line, should have lifted, tried to stay in it, keep it together,
Yeah.
and not cross.
Right.
And I think that's where a lot of it got hairy is because instead of just crossing into Brett's lane,
Yeah.
tried
Yeah,
to
like
like
the snap
keep it
from
out
it.
of Brett's lane
Yeah.
and made a bit of a hasty maneuver.
Right.
But in going sixes, it's,
I mean, heat of the moment, that fast, that quick, any type of
Yeah.
of correction, it could be awesome, or you have no idea of knowing
Mm-hmm.
what will happen.
yeah, like a deal like that, I get trying to keep it out of the lane, because you're thinking, oh, I shouldn't
someone next to
cross. Obviously Brett was in front of her, but
Mm-hmm.
use the lane if you have to,
Right.
type of thing. But again, if you're thinking, I can't cross this lane because then if he doesn't make weight,
Yeah.
I could still win the race.
Right.
If I cross, then I don't win.
Yeah.
It starts to become like you start to make those bad decisions. I did that. My car was on fire, and I made a poor decision where I was like, this fire bottle is $400 to replace.
No.
And I was like, do I pull it? And then I decided to pull it, but my brain was immediately going like,
Come on. I have a parachute on. I don't know. I'm jumping out of a plane. I don't know if I want to pack it
There are a
again.
lot to pack, man. I don't know.
Dude, no way.
So like I literally thought for a second. I was like,
Is it really a fire or was it just a spark? I mean...
as it came up the windshield, I was like, I should pull it.
Right. Right. Do you have fire suppression just in the engine bay or like on the bottom of the car too?
One over my shoulder, one in the engine bay right in front of the turbo, and then one at my feet.
Okay.
So there's 3 nozzles just in case.
I think I'm going to put that on next year.
Oh, it's great. I mean, the peace of mind.
Yeah.
I put it on and I had to use it 2 weeks after. The first event, I had it on and I had to use it.
Holy crap, dude.
That's how I knew it was $400 to replace.
Yeah.
And you got to ship it out. And it sucks because if you pull it during an event and you still can run the event, you now no longer have fire suppression.
Right.
Do you continue to race without fire suppression?
I think you have
to. Or do you now... That was also the thought. It's like, well, if the fire goes out, I just pulled the fire suppression and don't have it anymore.
And it releases it all, or are you able to shut it midway if it's already out?
All of it.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it just pulls the pin and you get all of it. But it's great. I would recommend everyone have fire suppression.
Yeah, I think it's important.
Because if you ever watch, sometimes safety crews aren't that quick.
Right.
And you have to be your own first responder on these type of deals.
Have you seen the video of that F1 driver that I think he hit a barrier or something? He's on fire for like 20 seconds and stands out of the fire.
Yeah, no one's showing up.
Right, exactly. To your point. You can't rely on other people. But he just stood right up, dude. It gives me chills when I talk about it. It's a crazy shot. But his safety gear, if he hadn't had that safety gear, he wouldn't have been able to get out of that situation.
Yeah, I mean, the fire stuff's pretty sketchy. Like, even... Jamie, I actually need to reach out to him because he didn't have his visor down.
Yeah. And he didn't have a sock on either.
I was talking to him right after that, and then I see the photo. I'm like, this man doesn't have his visor down?
Right.
I'm sick of people leaving their visors open.
That's me. I always forget to put it down. It's in the heat of the moment. You're talking to someone outside, and you forget to put it down. But
mine's like you can probably watch like 10 videos of me making a pass, and after the burnout, it'll always end up going down.
It's good.
It's like... The process, down. It'll always right after the burnout goes down because I like to be able to see everything clearly and then...
Right. I think I'm going to put like a little sticker on the dash, visor down.
That helps.
It's important.
They need like a sensor.
Yeah, right? Or put an automatic, like a lever on it, have it automatically go down.
You plug your helmet in and it knows if it's up. But I see it so much, man.
Do you use the like communication? Like some people have radios? Okay.
I don't have any radios. I don't have anybody to talk to usually on the starting line.
Right. I'll sometimes have her, and then if I talk to my wife after a pass, I'm sure she would just be like, good job.
My wife is like sometimes on the starting line, but now we have a 10-month-old, so normally they're just in the stands.
Right.
So I'll just be talking to them in the stands, listening to them.
Everything look good over there?
Yeah. Right. Didn't Dart have a H block or a K block for a while?
They had a B series block.
A B series?
I actually have one in my office right now at work. Jay had talked to Dart when they were developing the 2J block about the B series one, and they sent one over, and he was like, here, mess with this.
Yeah.
So I might like play with it a little bit, but it was a short-lived B series block because as soon as they released it into the market, the sanctioning bodies at that time outlawed an aftermarket block. Cast or billet, they said it has to be an OE block. From what I've seen some people do with it in the past out of sanctioned racing from that time period, it worked well, but it needed a little extra finishing work, and it needed to be tweaked in one or two spots. But it's a stronger piece. It's a closed deck, so it's sleeved from the factory. You don't have to do any aftermarket stuff. It's a stronger cap, stronger hardware on the cap too, and it's a nice piece.
Are they both iron blocks?
No, they're aluminum.
But so it's a Dart aluminum?
A Dart aluminum beefier casting.
That's pretty cool because Dart usually, I just think of them as making iron blocks. Yeah,
right.
I didn't think they casted in aluminum at all. Yeah,
and they also made two versions of that one.
Can they cast a couple 2Js in aluminum?
Would that be better though?
Depending on what you're trying to do.
I guess if you really wanted a light car.
Yeah, if you're not trying to make 2,000 horsepower, but you want something a little lighter, if you have like a road course car or something, I don't know.
Yeah, I guess that's a good point.
Be kind of cool to see an aluminum.
It'd probably sound different too.
Yeah, it probably would.
The vibrations would be a little different.
I mean, if they're just pouring metal into a mold, come on.
Just change it. Click the button. Go to the other one real quick.
Yeah, let's get a couple 2Js in aluminum.
Right.
I don't think it'd be better for what I'm doing. Maybe.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe it'd be fine. The LSs are fine with aluminum.
Right.
They make 1,500 horsepower aluminum.
Right.
But, so, yeah, I mean, you guys are aluminum. Why can't the 2Js?
Yeah, I don't know, man. What I did like about the Dart one, they had two versions. One was a OE replacement block and one was a tall deck. So you could get away with long rod or different stroke without having to do a whole bunch of funky stuff.
Oh, that's cool.
And I really would have liked to seen that take off. But
they have all the design.
Sure.
So really, if there's a demand, which Unfortunately, they seem like they kind of missed the mark because now the Ks are taking over.
Yeah.
So it's like they were close,
Yeah.
but then they stopped. But they're probably so much cheaper than the billet.
Yeah, probably half the price.
It's basically exactly what they did for the 2J guys. They just need to now do for the Ks and the Bs.
I think if they were to reintroduce that block being more rigid from the OEM block and cheaper than the billet, I think there's a good market there for it.
There's got to be. I mean, if there was... Because if you think about it like this, so there's 32 cars in X front-wheel drive. There's probably 80 motors.
At least, yeah.
Sitting there. But if there's a 2J class and there's 16 cars, there's probably 5 spare motors between all of them.
Right.
So there's just mathematically, there's way more blocks to be sold to the front-wheel drive guys.
Yeah. And not only that, but you have the small group of X front-wheel drive, or larger than the 2J in that point. What they buy, the rest of the crowd buys. And that Honda market is huge. It is giant. And those cars are only going to get faster. And if they keep on looking at the fast guys, they'll keep on buying those parts. Even if they're not competing at that level, they'll continue to try to go towards those parts. The market's insane. I think at Real Street, I mean, we were known for so long for Supras and 2Js and stuff. You look at the numbers, like what sells the most, it's like Universal and Honda. Honda's right there on the top spot for what the types of parts that are sold.
Well, there's so many of them now, too, because, Supra guys, they're few and far between, and most of them already have their aftermarket parts. Once you buy like an induction stage 2 2J motor, you're pretty good. You probably won't need anything else if you're just like a street guy that may see 1,000 horsepower.
Right. No, and the pool's just so much bigger with the Hondas.
Probably won't hear from you. You probably won't hear from that customer again.
Do you think those customers will keep building that same platform? Like, would you keep on doing the 2J in 5 or 10 years, or do you see yourself going somewhere else with it?
I don't know. I mean, since I bought that motor in 2017, the market's gone up so much that even if I had to rebuild the car now, I don't think I would go 2J.
Really?
Just because it's so much more expensive now.
What would you do? Coyote
or LS, really.
Right.
And then I'd be able to actually race friggin' World Cup.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, it's like, it sucks because as much as I love those motors, like, they're just getting so expensive because cores are unobtainable now. You can't just find them. You don't just go up the street and get a core.
Right.
I think Victor was getting them from Japan a lot, from like junkyards.
Directly?
They're just like shipping over cores.
Right.
But it sucks.
Yeah, and then what do you do when half your cores are bad? There's no way to know that before you get them, unless you have the right person picking them for you. I've
dealt with that too. Like I bought a crank, a new or used crank because I needed a new one, and it was bad. So it's like, well, there's $200 gone.
Yeah.
It's just, how do you know? What are you going to buy 50 cranks and hope, and then pay the guy to check them all?
Right. Yeah, and then you have the guy that stops checking them. Oh, they're fine. They look good.
Yeah.
But he's not looking for out of round or if they're bent.
Because I bent mine, I had to get a new one because it was slightly bent, and I'm sure this one in that car, in the new one, is probably bent a little out of true.
Starting to get out of there.
Yeah. But if you don't check, it's fine.
Right. Oh, the engine's perfect. Did you check it? No, man. It's just good. I know it.
If you don't check, it's fine.
Exactly.
But yeah, I don't know. I mean, the dart stuff's cool. The first 6-second dart pass was made in a stick shift car.
It's crazy.
This weekend, but you probably have touched quite a few of those darts.
The new one, the darts, I mean, they come in the 2 options with different headset options. I think they're really great.
They said they're changing stuff on them already, right?
The designs?
Some tweaks?
I know when I got my hands on some of the production ones, there was where the dowel needed to be placed for the larger stud. It wasn't machined all the way. So we talked to Dart at that point, and immediately they corrected that. We just shipped some of those blocks back. I don't know, aside from that, what else might have changed. When we got a pre-production one, there was a freeze plug that needed a little bit of tweaking for the back to clear some of the different flywheel combinations, and they immediately changed that as well. So they've been super receptive to it.
Do those have screw-in freeze plugs, or are they still just...
They're screw-in.
Yeah. That's nice.
Yeah.
I haven't dealt with them too much to see I haven't actually laid my hands on one to really inspect it much,
nice.
But having a screw-in freeze plug is definitely key.
Yeah, no, you don't want to have to worry about that.
No, I've already had to deal with that.
Have you had some fall out?
Yeah. That's how I crashed.
Oh, didn't we talk about this earlier this year? Yeah,
That's how I crashed. It was the freeze plugs. That's why I'm like, oh man, I'd love to have screw in. The cylinder heads have screw in. The OEM cylinder heads have screw in. But they didn't think to do that on the...
I assume now in your current block you have screw-in freeze plugs. You still have OEM-style freeze plugs?
Yeah.
Dude, just pull the fire suppression.
If you don't kick the head gasket out, they're fine.
What if you kick the head gasket out?
Then it's not fine. That's the only time head gaskets never go on race cars.
Of course. It's not a maintenance item at all.
No, it's fine. As long as you keep the head gasket in. Friggin' tuners.
When do you plan to ever pull that engine out again? Do you have like next year I'll refresh it or something? Is that on your radar?
It kind of just depends on passes, I guess. Like, we'll just keep doing passes until we see some crankcase pressure start to build or something.
Hopefully not a head gasket.
Hopefully not a head gasket.
Please put screw-ins in there.
Well, now I have coolant pressure sensor and crankcase pressure, which I did not have before.
Damn.
Because we put a whole new ECU in it, new wiring, all kinds of fancy stuff.
Did you set up the safeties for it?
There's probably no safeties in there.
So Peter, the guy with the Sentra I was telling you about, he has all the pressure sensors set up with safeties. And when we started testing out that car, every safety we had to bring down because different idle pressures, it hits the threshold. And then he asked me, he's like, hey, what do you have this set up to? And I'm like, I know I have the pressure readings. I don't think I have a safety on it. I just kind of overlook it after the fact. But I really should put some safeties in there.
You don't need a safety on there. It's gonna make you lose a race. If I had a safety on it, it'd probably make me lose a race, and I'd be pissed.
So I've got the fancy coolant pressure sensor, right? But I also have my relief valve on the radiator cap. I have it routed straight to my windshield. So if I see some liquid come out, that's my little, you can let off or stay in it depending where you're at.
Well, you see with my deal, like none went in the radiator. None went in like the overflow. It all just
puked out?
Right out. It all just went right out the freaking the freeze plugs.
Yeah.
It didn't even give me a chance.
Did it blow a head gasket or did they just fall out from being corroded and old?
No, it actually blew a head gasket. Okay. Yeah, and then it right out the back.
Yeah.
Right out the back.
The flywheel or the torque converter.
Yeah, right by that.
Damn.
Yeah, it was sad. So how did you get your start at Real Street? How did you connect with them?
So I've been there 4 years now, right? And before that, I worked in restaurants. I was a server, bartender, stuff like that. It gave me time to work on cars in the afternoons. Well, work in the afternoons and work on cars in the mornings. But I didn't really have a plan to change that. I moved down to Orlando to get closer to my now wife, We looked at area jobs in the area, and then Real Street was hiring. I had watched their videos for years. And a position came up for sales, interviewed. I did, I think, 3 interviews. They had a couple rounds.
Oh, wow.
And, yeah, they were pretty thorough. And, I came on board, worked in sales a little bit, and didn't love the sales, just to be completely transparent. I think it's a good opportunity for people who like that kind of environment, but I'm not the kind of guy that can just sit down every day, all day, and do the exact same thing.
Just answer phones and answer questions the same.
Yeah, I like being hands-on. I like being able to try different things.
Yeah.
I like moving around. So it got to the point that I was in sales and no longer loving it. And I talked to some of the guys there, and they said, well, we want to keep you here in whatever capacity that looks like. Let's find a place that works for you. So at that point, I moved from sales to the media department, and having background in media definitely helped that a lot. And I did that a little bit. Then I started venturing into not just doing the media stuff with Kevin, who also works there in media, but also learning some stuff from Jay with the engines whenever he'd assemble something or tear it down or work on some of the cars, stuff like that. Yeah,
because you're probably filming and dealing with that the whole time anyways.
Right. And, things take a couple takes, and each take you hear something else. And the video might show 10 little key things that you can pick up on, but behind the scenes, you're picking up 20 or 30.
Yeah.
So that was cool. Picked up a lot from him, and Jay ventured off into his path. But at Real Street, around that same time, we also got an engine dyno. So now there's a path for engine dyno testing and learning. So I've been doing a lot of stuff in that avenue, and I got some opportunities to work on a few engines here and there. Nothing big scale, but enough for me to continue developing my learning behind the scenes. And that's what I like doing. If I can feed myself on knowledge, that's my reason to get up in the morning. And Real Street gives me that opportunity. So
that's pretty cool. Because
neat.
I've seen the engine dyno stuff. You guys have a 2J on it.
Yeah,
pretty frequently. And what's that mostly to test I guess you can test anything, but like cams, turbos, like what are you guys mostly trying to dial in?
This past week, we were around 1,700 horsepower on a Dart engine with an OEM size fastener. So we're doing like endurance testing on this specific week. Endurance
OEM
testing
style size fastener?
Without going to like a larger diameter stud.
Oh, okay.
So the smaller stud, I forget the exact number on it, but some people step up to a half inch. And Dart does provide a larger stud version of the block. But we wanted to see where the limit would be that you could consecutively and consistently race an engine at this power level without having to switch to a copper gasket with like a fire ring or doing a bigger stud and be able to still keep an MLS in it. So this particular week, that's what we're working on. But throughout different weeks, we'll do, okay, let's see what these cams do versus that one. What does the torque curve look like on this turbo versus this one? What will a fuel difference do without changing anything but the stoic values for lambda to stay the same? Like on a K-Series, we did that not too long ago. And little things that you can really take the myths and misconceptions out of the sport, because everybody has their opinion, but if you test it, it's something else.
Yeah.
And
well, I mean, 2J's been around
so much you can
long,
do
too. It's crazy to see that it's still innovating on that deal.
Yeah.
It's cool to see, but it's just crazy that there's still so much. Like, you know, one thing I was thinking about when you were coming on was what the new engine combination will be, but it almost seems like all the new engines are so fragile that they kind of suck.
Like the newer production engines?
Yeah, just across the board, like the new Honda stuff, like even
different.
Like, you know, what is it, the Gen 8 Civic now, or what are they on, Gen 11?
I think it's like 11 or 12, something like that.
I don't know how they've gotten so far.
There's a lot.
We're only on the 6th Gen Camaro, but they're on the 11th and 12th Gen Civics.
They love changing it up.
They're so far into that. But those engines are so funky.
Right.
Even though people have been pretty fast with some of them, they're just so funky in the way that they design these things. I don't know if you'll be able to make the power or make any power.
I think you will eventually. I don't know what that looks like. I think Rob from Induction, he has one of the newer Civics, right? The Civic Type R. Yeah. I'm pretty sure I saw he posted something a couple weeks or a couple months ago about like some crazy gains just in tuning.
I know he was tuning a 9th or 1 Civic that broke the record for, 9th gen. But again, then you're heavier too, which that like the Type R weighs as much as like most normal vehicles. Right. The Civic Honda was exciting because it weighed, 2,200 pounds. Right. You kind of lose a lot of that excitement when it weighs 3,800 pounds.
Have you driven one of those new Civics?
I haven't driven a Type R.
If you get an opportunity to, you should. When you go from an old Civic that they're rattly, they sway a lot. They're good on gas, but they're not the comfiest cars to drive in. They don't handle very great in its stock form. And you jump in a newer Civic Type R, and oh my God, they are a blast to drive.
They seem like a really good daily driver.
Oh, yeah.
I know.
I think it's a perfect spot for a Honda guy.
John Cena loves his.
Yeah, I saw a video.
He talks about his all the time.
That. Yeah. You'd think he's like a paid spokesman or something for Honda.
Yeah. There was a Cars and Coffee, and he's standing out there with his Type R. Like, he could drive anything he wants. And this guy's just like driving a stick shift Type R.
What a guy. He went from such a different market with, it was WWE, right? That's what he was in? Yeah. To then acting, and he's really blown up in that world.
Yeah, and now, he just lives in Tampa, but...
Does he really?
Yeah.
No way.
It's pretty funny that he's like deep into the Type R. Is like his go-to.
Yeah. we should get him to come out to one of the FL2Ks.
That would be awesome.
It'd be insane.
He goes to Cars and Coffee and stuff, and just like a normal guy. I wonder how well he'd fit in many other vehicles, because
he's a big dude.
Yeah, he's pretty wide. I don't think he's super tall, but he's pretty wide. So I guess your market gets a little smaller of vehicles. The Civic Type Rs are pretty big.
Right.
But yeah, I don't know. What you have a fuel tech in your car, right?
Yeah, FT550.
What do most people run in the front wheel drive? Is it kind of across the board?
A lot of them fuel tech. They do really nice stuff. Part of it comes down to the tuners. You'll have your group of tuners that are the go-to for the fast guys, and their ECU of flavor will be fuel tech because they work a lot with it and they have it figured out. Mm-hmm. And then you have a couple guys that are on Motec, also fantastic stuff. Your group of tuners that only reach for that.
The club.
Yeah, the club.
The in club.
You got to be like in that clique for that.
You got to know someone.
For sure. But both work very well. I went over to Fuel Tech because I love the dash. That was like the big ticket for me. I really like having everything touchscreen in front of you.
Yeah.
And it worked with what I was looking for. But I think their new 700, FT700 with a bigger dash display, it's pretty sweet.
Someday, people will own them.
Maybe one day. I just saw they posted, I want to say like a week ago, first pass in the U.S. with a 700.
They're at Orlando with one in a car right now, actually.
Okay, that's probably the one that they posted.
To like in a RVW car.
Okay.
But it is funny to joke about the someday because, I mean, what has it been, 2-3 years?
I think it's about 2 years.
Yeah, that's a bit to be promoting.
It's a lot.
A product that hasn't come out. And I got nothing against Fuel Tech.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, great system, but it's been a bit.
It has been. I know that the flooding in Brazil didn't help.
Yeah.
That obviously put them back in some respect for that. What I will say about Fuel Tech that I really love as a brand, not only their hardware, but as a brand as a whole, they're super supportive of their customer service and their technical support. You can call in, not any time of day, but any day, or send a WhatsApp message to their main line, and they'll respond instantly.
That's what I always hear. People are like, they'll spend 3 hours on the phone with you to make sure you got it figured out.
Oh, yeah. No, they'll follow up with you, say, hey, what did you think about this? Do you want to try this? Do you want to try a different method?
Yeah.
They're very, very willing to help with that respect.
I always like, I have a Haltech in my car, but, companies like Haltech, Fuel Tech, they're at events. Mm-hmm. They sponsor events. They promote events. They're there providing support. Right. FL2K, there was a Haltech trailer and booth, and if you needed parts, if
I
you
got
needed
a sensor from them at FL2K.
Exactly.
Yep.
If you needed pins or something stupid, they're there.
Yep.
Fuel Tech, they're at most events. If you need if your screen goes bad or your coil drivers, if you got a faster car, I don't know if you have a coil driver.
Not on my car. No.
Yeah, or injector driver boxes, stuff like that.
They stand by it, though.
Yeah, they're actually there to help, which is kind of needed when you spend thousands of dollars on a system.
Yeah. And even if they don't have a booth, they almost always have a presence of at least one or two guys.
Yeah.
Like, Garrett from Fuel Tech?
Yep.
I go to every event that I go to, he's almost always there.
Didn't he have a front-wheel drive car?
I think so.
Yeah.
I haven't seen him racing. I know that he's working on something else right now. I don't know specifically what he has right now, though.
I really want to try driving one of those things because Victor always it's Victor, so he talks about he might exaggerate a little bit, but he talks about how intense they are to drive.
Okay.
And I don't doubt that they're intense to drive. I may just doubt a little bit of how Victor makes it out to be. How he
describes it?
Yes.
Okay.
It fits his narrative because he's the driver of it, so,
Intense.
Oh,
Very
man.
intense.
You don't even know.
You have no idea. The back half is crazy.
Yeah, and stopping it and, all this stuff and launching it. It seems tough. I'm not.
Sure.
Getting them to move off the starting line does seem like a challenge.
I'm not at that level, so I can't speak to that fast of the front-wheel drive cars, but for me, it's almost like everything I've known. I started drag racing in front-wheel drive, and I'm still there. I think it's a normal to me, maybe. I don't know. If you ever want to drive a slow one, you can hop in mine for a pass.
That would be kind of cool. 950s. That's probably the smarter start.
Get used to it for a little bit.
I mean, not that, even in those deals, I feel like if you just ran to the 8th, you'd be plenty happy.
Yeah.
I don't need to go
get your feet wet.
205. It just doesn't. There's not much more past the 8th in most cars that's more enjoyable.
Right. You want that blunt acceleration from the line.
Yeah. Even my car, I shut it down at the 8th all the time, and I'm like, okay.
It was a nice pass.
I'm good.
Time to go home.
I'm pretty happy with that. I know that it worked.
You're close to Bradenton.
Oh, yeah.
I knew that you were in the area, but when we passed the exit that we used to take off to go to the track, and I'm like, damn, he's very close to this spot right now.
Yeah, there's mod knots going on right now.
Were you going to go out?
Probably maybe tomorrow for finals. Yeah, see Brett win.
What class is he running?
Mod motor versus the world. I don't know what the world is.
The big one, or
it's the fastest class.
Okay.
Jim is running quarter mile kings, and then they got like 750 index, 850 index, all kinds of good stuff. 750 index is a pretty fast index.
Yeah.
That's cooking.
Yeah. Yeah. What have you been in your car?
767, but that was only to 1,200 feet. I got out of it because the breakout was like a 765. So I was like,
wow,
better not break out.
Do you plan to keep on pushing it faster, or you want to kind of live around there?
I would love to push it faster, but that next step is it's a lot.
Yeah.
Because I only got 6 injectors.
Right.
I, still stock block, stock crank, still 2-speed power glide.
Oh, I didn't realize you were on a glide.
Yeah. It'd be nice to have a 400, but 400s are not cheap. They're freaking baller ass shit, dude.
Yeah.
Like a badass power glide's like $5,000. A badass turbo 400 is like expensive. $30,000.
They're very expensive.
It's like, what the hell is why is there this difference here?
I'll show you this picture.
I just want to freaking, I just need one more gear. Why is it going to cost me another $30,000?
Where did I put this picture? I put it on my story last night. We just got a Turbo 400 in for, of course it expired. Anyways, I'll send you the picture later. We just got one in for the dragster that we're building right now. So Michael from Real Street and Brian also that's there. The three of us, we bought this stupid dragster that we probably shouldn't have bought because we all have other projects going on. And we have a little 2J going together for it. And one of the other guys at Real Street blessed us with a Turbo 400. So that just came in yesterday from ATI.
Dang.
Yeah. So
okay, so you got
the most expensive thing on the whole setup. Luckily, we didn't have to pay for that one.
The one thing that you guys can't just like put together in-house with some spare parts.
Right, which we did for the 2J.
Yeah, I figured there'd be
a whole bunch of some rods here, some pistons here. We had a good crank there. The head was fine from this build and kind of just pulled it all together.
Things here and there. It's
fine. The compression might be off from this cylinder to that cylinder, but it's still compression.
It's fine. Like Matt from Sloppy Mechanics one time had an LS put together with 2 different cylinder heads.
Yeah.
People were like, that would never work.
Turned right on, right?
Went down the track fine. It was like just 2 completely different engine cylinder heads, 2 different cast numbers, the whole 9.
It's crazy what you can get away with.
Yeah, people don't realize that.
No.
If you're prepared to like take it apart if you have to.
Right. You have to be willing.
Yeah. Like on my car, I wouldn't want to just like throw something in there because I really don't want to have to pull the engine out.
Right.
But on a dragster, when the engine's like right there.
Yeah, dude, it's 24 feet long. But the area where the engine sits, it's literally the easiest thing you could ever work on.
Yeah.
You just take the panels off and everything's exposed. It's like 4 bolts to pull the engine on that.
But like, what's the plan?
We probably should have asked ourselves that before buying it.
Yeah, like go bracket race it.
I don't know. So we got it for, I think we were like $1,200 each into buying it. It was just over $3,000. And we thought it was cool and we could put a 2J in it, and we stopped thinking there.
Okay.
But the idea was honestly just to have something that we could go out and do some hits in. So
are you going to get it to the track?
We're going to either use the Real Street 2-car trailer, which is long enough, but that obviously requires everybody being on board for that. So the backup plan is to have an open trailer with it kind of sticking out the nose and sticking out the back very dangerously.
I like that plan.
But I do like that plan too.
It's very OSW.
Very boppy spec.
Yeah.
That
is some real OSW stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Will they let you race it at the no prep?
I don't think there's a rule saying you can't.
Will Javier let you race it at the no prep?
Probably not.
It'll be staged where
have
the
it
front
like
tires
in the sand.
but the tires will be still in the burnout area.
Right. So we won't have it ready for this no prep coming up. But we did talk about it. We're like, what if we show up to one of those run what you brung no preps? It probably wouldn't be competitive, but it would be fun and it'd be pretty hilarious.
I mean, if it's not competitive, then they should definitely let you show up.
They're not gonna kick us down for being slow.
Come on. Who doesn't want to beat a dragster with a 2J?
Right.
Yeah.
That thing's gonna be fun. We have most of the parts already figured out for it, and now that the trans came in yesterday, we can start bolting it up. We have an adapter plate for it that goes right to the frame rail, so it's like a motor plate and adapter plate at the same time.
Yep.
We'll do a little fabrication for the intercooler and some front mounts for the engine support. And I think we just need to figure out the yoke connection between like the diff to the trans, because it was a glide dragster before.
Yeah, so it's a little longer.
Yeah, so we just got to mess with that a bit.
Yeah, it's probably the same kind of adapter deal that I use. I use the ATF speed adapter plates on my trans, so there's like a little...
Like half an inch or something?
Yeah, and then there's also a really thick flywheel too, flex plate.
It's probably the same thing.
Yeah, it's awesome. I've never had a problem with this thing.
Yeah.
And it slides right in. It has like built-on motor mounts. I love the ATF stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Especially for that, because Jason was one of the first to figure out putting a 2J to a Turbo 400 or Turbo 400 or a Power Glide, and he's really got that dialed in where it fits insanely well with all the hardware and everything. Yeah, I don't know which one you guys are using, but there's a few now on the market.
It's a fancy one, that's for sure.
Yeah, they're pretty cool.
It's a nice looking transmission, that's for sure.
Are you gonna try to no prep race your car?
Yeah.
Bring it out to Javi's Deer?
Yeah, I'll be there on the 30th.
Oh, sick.
There's it's on the back of the track, so the no preps I've done before were scraped front half, and I had the car pretty good for that, but I need to do some testing for asphalt racing. So
yeah, actual no prep.
Actual no prep.
Do you get to pour a puddle? Is it like no burnout, or is it no burnout?
I think it's a drum of water that you get to pour your puddle, but no juice, no pimp juice or whatever. Mm-hmm. And one burnout and start off a light. So
okay,
I'm going to be doing burnouts in the back of work this whole next week.
Because I was at Garrett's and there was no burnout, but it was a lot of all-wheel drive cars.
Those things were boogieing.
They don't really need a burnout.
Right.
He was saying, he was like, I think Miles' car made the fastest pass from what I visually saw.
Right. His car's insane, dude.
Yeah, I mean, it was going 750s.
Freaking Miles.
Yeah, I couldn't believe that.
Dude, he had that engine failure at World Cup, and they just thrashed and got it back together and went another 7-second pass for the rest of the event.
Yep.
Like,
yeah, he didn't seem like he was getting it back together. He seemed pretty discouraged on the first night. And
they made it happen, though.
Yeah, they had parts and stuff.
Yeah.
And that's a B series as well, right?
B series, yeah. But he's billet block, and he just made a post that he's doing that aftermarket casted head that 4Pistons releasing. So that'll be cool. I think that'll help him go even faster.
I love that car has stock fenders in the front.
It sucks because you could cut into a tire, but it's badass.
It looks sick with the stock. Not that cool. Your wide body isn't cool, but the way that sits with factory everything,
and it's fast as hell.
Is oh, okay.
Yeah.
Because it's so different looking than all the rest of the front-wheel drive stuff.
Right.
But yeah, his all-wheel drive. I would love to build an all-wheel drive Honda, but when I wanted to do it versus now, the price of all those parts and availability has changed.
Well, the wagon stuff is the main component for drive shaft, viscous coupler, and the differential. And you only had so many of those back in the 80s. Now they're super old. If the parts are even still good, you can't even find them. So just the diff you can sell for $4,000 for an OEM 40-year-old differential.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
I was talking to some Eagle Talon guys at World Cup, and they just put a viscous from a Honda in their car.
No way.
And they said it was the fastest and most consistent it's ever been.
Wow.
Because it didn't try to do stupid Eagle Talon things. It did all-wheel drive Honda things. And just kind of
smoothly.
It left smoothly and brought the power in slowly. And I don't know if anybody's tried it yet besides them, but they were like, oh, yeah, it was great. We didn't break anything. We were consistent.
Right. Because the longest time you see the all-wheel drive Hondas, they leave and they're quick, but they're straight. For the most part, they come out and it's not hopping all over the place. It's not bucking. And the Mitsubishis always had that issue. You couldn't get them to leave consistently. And when they did leave nice, they'd have great passes.
Well, and they can make power. They can make a ton of power. And they're pretty big cars. They have a lot more wheelbase than a Honda. Right. So it seems like the viscous would be the key to make that the best chassis.
Listen, those 1980s Honda engineers just had it down.
They figured it out.
They figured something.
I don't know how or why they made it so good, but they had it really figured out.
Over-engineering it, dude.
I think the one guys that do a lot of that stuff are pretty local to here. They're up in Clearwater.
Which ones?
I'm trying to think of the shop that does it all, that sells all that.
Oh, S1 built.
S1.
Yeah.
Yeah, they used to be right by our old shop in Clearwater.
Yeah, they make a lot of nice parts for the Honda's all-wheel drive stuff.
Yeah, they're deep into that stuff.
Yeah, I think maybe 80% of their whole business is just that.
They have some clean builds of them of their own as well.
Yeah,
some of them.
The in-house stuff that they do, super clean, great craftsmanship.
Yeah,
very, very nice work.
So how can we convince you to race X front-wheel drive?
Oh God, I need pockets that are a lot bigger.
More sponsorships.
Right. Let's get I don't know, McDonald's on board or something.
Yeah, some kind of big sponsor.
Write a check. But I don't know, man. If they do changes that lets the field not have to pour money into the car every single pass, maybe I'll do something in the future. But that's almost asking the impossible. You know, they're only going to get faster. So I think it's just finding the groove in similar classes, for me at least, that don't need to be that crazy. Because you see a lot of these fast cars, most of them are associated to a shop. They're almost okay with having the expense because of the marketing that's attached to it. And personally, I'm not at a level that I'm benefiting just spewing money if I were racing like that.
You have to really be a crazy person.
Very crazy.
To want to do that.
Very, very crazy. Yeah. Lunatics.
Yes, absolutely.
Yes.
Even to race at a high level in any of these, you have to actually be a crazy person.
Yeah.
Like
most normal people wouldn't understand it.
No.
You tell somebody at a supermarket that and they're like, you race for how many seconds? And you spend your whole life building this up? Some cars, hundreds of thousands of dollars just to have a couple seconds of enjoyment?
In one of the World Cup videos, I said it was a grueling week because they show up on Monday and they don't leave till Monday.
Yeah.
And there were people like, "Oh, you're racing. It's not a grueling week. Why would you call it that?" I'm like,
It's
it
heavy.
Is. Not for me because I'm just spectating.
Right.
But like, a lot of these guys
Those
are
guys
having a tough
aren't sleeping.
week. Like, it's not easy.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's awesome, but they almost need like a B class where they can. I said this with stick shift, where they need like a diaphragm street style class at World Cup.
I think last year they had Mean Street. I want to say it was last year, if not the year before, which was a nice in between, but because they were turbo size limited. But then the objection to that solution is that blue car I was telling you about earlier with a smaller turbo. That was a Mean Street style build that just took the weight penalty and added nitrous and was running with the sport front-wheel drive classes.
Yeah.
So how do you satisfy the group that wants to run slower without being a second slower, do like half a second slower, without having to grenade everything? I don't know. Because people like the fast cars. People like seeing those 7-second passes, side-by-side sevens.
Yeah, you want them to go fast.
Yeah.
And I know even one of the comments I saw was like the transmission. So if you ran a different style transmission, they would be more reliable.
Pattern. Yeah.
Or is there any option for an automatic?
I don't know. I haven't seen one work, but I know that they make adapter plates for like I think it's the DCT stuff for K-Series. It'd be cool to see somebody push that.
Yeah, because like there's got to be an option for some kind of automatic. I wonder if they'd even let you in.
I don't know. I think it's worth trying.
You have to actually go fast.
Yeah.
To be let in.
Right.
It'd be cool to see somebody try to push some kind of automatic. Because I know Jamie, even in one of his SRT4 Neon deals, he had an auto in there, and it was pretty decent, but it didn't have a trans brake, so he couldn't really leave on much boost. He had to like really hold the foot brake.
Yeah.
So if you don't have a trans brake, it makes it pretty hard.
Yeah. No, you really need to make something specifically for it.
Yeah.
For those cars. You know, most of them are leaving on like 40 pounds of boost. You need a lot to get a car on like an automatic car to actually get that to come up.
Well, Victor's car, I think, like bogged right off the line and stalled. I think it actually like turned off. Yeah.
Oh, man.
Like, Rob was like, yeah, the RPM dropped so low it didn't even.
Wow.
It just couldn't even get off the line.
Was that from just too much prep
probably
for what they thought was going to be up there? Yeah.
They didn't have enough RPM in it probably or something.
Right.
I would imagine they just need more RPM to get the wheel speed up to hopefully get it to move.
Right.
Maybe.
I guess they're trying to follow that fine line of don't bog, get enough traction, and also get enough wheel speed so you can come out on that 60-foot.
Well, what happened in that final qualifier was, like, Jason Miller sprayed the whole track, like, 3 times.
Right.
Like, they did, like, 3 passes on it, and then...
It's a lot of glue.
Yeah, I was like, the Hondas don't really want this much glue.
Right.
Why would you do this to them?
Right.
And then the first 2 pairs, there was a blown-up car and 2 crashes.
Yeah.
I was like, oh... Something has to happen there. You gotta
What do you think they should do?
I mean, the problem is what I think doesn't matter because I don't race it. I don't promote an event. I don't.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know what they should do. Like they have to listen to the racers and the drivers. That's what they should do.
That's true.
Is listen to the people that tune these cars and
because
drive them.
there's got to be a solution, you know, because that downtime sucks for everybody.
Oh yeah, and blown up cars sucks for everyone, and the cost sucks for everyone. So that's why they have to listen to the drivers. If the drivers beg for a smaller turbo, you should do that.
Right.
Or I don't know if they beg for 1,000-foot race instead of
that might be another solution. So was it one of your posts that you said something about that? Or I think I saw that on Facebook recently.
Just 1,000-foot.
1,000-foot, like how they slow down the top fuel cars to go 1,000-foot back in the day, and they ended up catching up. But if they kept it at 1,320, they would have gone even faster anyways.
Yeah, they'd be going like 380.
Right. Insane.
That extra 300 feet would be a lot.
That might even be a solution because a lot of those cars broke right at the beginning of the shutdown. Yeah. They let off and it lets go.
Well, that's right where the most power finally comes in.
Right.
It's probably that
From
last
all of
300
that to nothing.
feet. Yeah. So if you just take away that last little bit of power, that is really like the engine's just holding on a little bit. Yeah. You could probably save them a little money.
I think so.
And that would be where it comes down to. It's like, it sucks to just talk about money, but that's what keeps the race alive. That's what keeps people involved from leaving the class.
Yeah, well, they're not going to go and do this year after year if they keep on spewing money for no reason. Not everybody, at least.
No, it only lasts so long. And that's the problem. If you have to have a class that everybody, or not everybody, but more people will race. Because as you chip away at it, suddenly you have no field. Yeah. Even the stick shift stuff's running away like crazy.
What was it one field for stick shift this year? Okay. That's where the Leroy was in, right?
Yeah.
Did you see that Civic race with Leroy?
Oh, I saw it. I was there watching it. I was watching the bulbs flicker.
Yeah.
My opinion is it was an accident.
Right.
He didn't mean to make the bulbs flicker. I don't think anybody's good enough at driving to make the bulbs flicker like that.
You'd have to have a crazy setup to do anything specifically like that.
But I think his car wasn't legal. I think his car...
From the light thing?
I think you can't have anything in the beams. So the downpipe being in the beams affecting it.
Was it too low or something?
It was pointing right down. So it was triggering beams.
Okay.
But also, if your bumper has to be 3 inches off the ground.
Right.
So if that wasn't legal, and if it was in the beams, that's where I think the car was at fault.
Okay. Now that does come down again to like tech. Tech should call something out like that, right?
Well, they will measure you in tech when you first get there, but they won't measure you after you air your tires down to 3 PSI or whatever.
It's true.
It changes a lot of ride height.
Especially on those slicks. There's no, like we talked about earlier, it's soft sidewall.
Yeah.
Lowers
and
a lot.
This is all speculation. I would just assume that that's part of why the bulbs are flickering like that is because, NHRA has very specific rules about this.
Right.
So.
That makes sense. It sucked to see how divisive that situation was. There was a lot of controversy online from that.
They were very happy about their win.
A lot. Okay, so to that, the guys that were racing, Farrell, High Boost, they are like OG YouTube sensation drag racers or street racers from back in the day. So their following, dude, are freaking crazy people. You know, I grew up watching those street races with him. Yeah. And they came out of the woods to bat for that race, and they were very happy about it. But I think it was cool to see a car like that I used to watch Street Race or those guys come out to the track. What I didn't like to see was so many people online hating each other from both sides over a race like that,
Yeah, and,
because that's not constructive for the sport.
No, and him attacking Garrett was a little funny to me. Like, Garrett's fans attacking him, it's like, okay, like fans do what they want.
Right.
He could have just let his fans attack Garrett.
Yeah.
And just backed off.
Yeah.
He's obviously
those New York, New
it.
Jersey drag racers are crazy.
I know. I definitely understand that. And I'm, live it up. It's over now. I mean, nobody cares anymore. It's already done. Garrett's fans have moved on.
Right.
He should probably also move on.
Is he still online about all that
Probably.
stuff? Okay.
He probably will be forever.
The win of the century.
Exactly. After getting dragged in round 2.
Was that round 1?
That was round 1.
Okay.
And then round 2, he went like an 8-1 to a 7-1.
Oh my God.
He got completely ripped.
That's funny, dude.
Yeah. But again, the car's impressive. Like he's got like, that's a badass car. I think it went 740.
Something like that. That's like the top 5 or something.
Yeah, like that Hondas. Car is sick. Like that's nothing against the car at all.
Sure.
He should learn how to stage it. And Garrett, love the guy.
Sure.
Also needs a little bit of learning how to stage, I would say.
Okay.
Because he left himself vulnerable to that
by going in first.
Getting up on the popper.
Yeah.
And then getting up and then like 1, 2, and then starting to roll in.
Yeah.
Because now you've been up on the brake for 2 seconds before you even lit the bulb.
Right.
So the timer didn't start until you were already in, but you were already on the bumper.
Right.
Not bumping in, but on the 2-step.
Yeah.
So you're sitting there for 10 seconds by your own doing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know.
It was a crazy situation. I see both sides. I see the people who are like, hey, it's a race. That's what racing is. And I understand also the other side where it's like, okay, well, there's something you need to look a little bit closer. If something is triggering it, then that might be an issue. You need to evaluate what that is. But at the end of the day, I think you can't take away what like Garrett does for the sport.
Yeah.
What Farrell even did for the sport years online doing all his stuff. I don't think anybody should attack anybody else. Not specifically them two, but the groups behind either party or anything online about it. I think, listen, man, it's a race. Chop it up to that's what happens. It's racing on either side, and go out and race again.
I guess he did flip Garrett off in the pit, like he rode by Garrett's pit.
Like he flipped him off,
and then he also called him a fag.
I'm telling you, bro, those New York, New Jersey people are crazy.
I know. I was like, all right, you already won, man. Like, leave it alone.
Right.
But flipping him off is kind of funny. Garrett was actually laughing at both of those too. He was like, all right, whatever. Like, it is what it is.
That's hilarious.
But again, I think he couldn't do. I don't think he could stage his car very well. I think he was so glued to the track that he was struggling to get it into the beams. And
that makes sense.
He was probably way too scared to let off the clutch a little bit more.
Right.
Because then you're going to lunge forward.
Yeah, you red light, especially at a World Cup.
Against Garrett, then Garrett was going to post him for a week.
I mean, either it could have gone either direction. It would have been some stuff online, but
yeah.
Hopefully that kind of stuff doesn't determine other people's views of racing and they just take it for what it is,
Yeah.
I do like that, Garrett brings a huge crowd to racing. There were people that were coming up to our booth who aren't even car people, and we talked to people, hey, where you from? What are you doing? Blah, blah, blah. And they're like, yeah, we're from the area, but we don't really watch racing. We just watch this guy on YouTube. And he said he was coming out to this racetrack. How cool is that?
Yeah.
You're bringing these new people into this crowd, then they have kids, and then those kids grow up in drag racing, and those kids are into it. You're really adding to the sport at that point. I really admire that on his part.
You guys should really come to the Christmas tree race if you've never been.
Okay.
Because that is eye-opening.
Is it a big crowd?
The crowd is massive.
Really?
And it's a lot of families, and the amount of families that have never been to a racetrack at that event is probably more than any other race throughout the year. Because, it's everybody's got Christmas lights on their cars, and like the drag racing is like a small part of it. Even at the drivers' meeting, Garrett's like, listen, guys, like this is for fun.
It's not that serious.
Don't take it too seriously. Like,
that's cool.
It's cool if you win and all, but like, don't take it too seriously. This is just for the people.
Right.
So the fans that are watching are not drag race fans. They're at a Christmas show.
They're people.
Yeah. So they get to actually like get in their first taste of drag racing, which is my favorite part of that deal, because if we can get you there for the Christmas tree race, maybe you'll come back for US Street or Snowbirds or US Street Nationals or all these other cool races.
Right. And more times than not, like, obviously you have the few situations where people butt heads, but when you go to a drag strip and you talk to regular people or you talk to racers, they're all there for the same thing. They want to enjoy times with their friends or with their family. They want to do what they have their passion about, and they're just happy people. Obviously, you blow an engine, you're not too happy. But for the most part, dude, people are just, they're just willing to break bread with anybody there.
Yeah.
You know, you meet people from all over the world, from different ethnicities, from different countries, and they just want to have a good time.
Yeah, I've talked about this with a few people that, you know, the win lights, they're not like sexist or racist or anything like that.
Yep.
It's pretty universal. It's just a win light. It's just a Christmas tree. It's just like the tree.
Right.
Like, they don't care who's in the driver's seat. Neither of those things care. Yeah. They don't know. It's completely universal there.
Yeah.
It's not like, it's pretty great for that reason. But man, this has been fun.
This is cool.
I'm glad you guys came all the way down here. I wanted to I have your YouTube here somewhere. SP Tuning on YouTube.
That's right.
Yeah, plug some of your stuff, man. Where can people find you?
I appreciate it. Yeah, so SP Tuning on YouTube. That's the channel I've had for, several years now. Then Instagram, Slow Integra, because that's exactly what it is.
Of course.
A super slow Integra. And hopefully some more stuff coming on that stuff soon. I kind of took a brief break from making as much content, just with life, you know how things get. But this year ramping up, I started these last couple months, but this year ramping up, we have a new build coming too. So something I don't want to talk about on camera, I'll tell you about later, but some different stuff that should be in the works soon that should excite some people.
Okay. I'm already ready. I don't know what it is. It's a good thing I don't, because I would have let it slip. I always tell Jim not to tell me any secrets. Like if you're doing anything
out online now.
I was like, Jim, if you're doing anything cool in your car, like I want to know, but you can't tell me.
Yeah.
Because I forget which is
where's the line,
secret or not. Yeah. Exactly.
That's cool.
Talking on a microphone too much. But
hey, well, thanks for having us over, dude. It's been a real pleasure.
Yeah, dude, this was awesome. I'm glad we could talk some front-wheel drive stuff. I hope it was enlightening for some people here.
I hope so.
Thank you guys so much for watching. We'll see you next time.
Yeah.